Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the public informational meeting for State Project number 130-192, replacement of Bridge 5029 on Poverty Road over the Pomperaug River in the town of Southbury. My name is Mark Burns. I'm the project manager for the Federal Local Bridge Program. This is my contact information. It's okay, Tom. So, best way to reach me is by email. Goals for tonight's meeting will be project team introductions, interactions with the project team. We will explain the Federal Local Bridge Program, Design Managed by State, or DMS program, followed by a formal presentation of the design progress, where we will explain the condition of the existing bridge and define the purpose and need, and recommend our viable proposal. Please bear in mind we are only at 30% design and we're still soliciting input from the town and stakeholders. And then there'll be an open forum for your questions. I have to read this slide regarding Title VI and civil rights. No person on the basis of race, color, or national origin be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. We highly encourage you to fill out the voluntary post-meeting survey located at the hyperlink below and at the QR code. There's also an additional link for any civil rights information from the Office of Equity. This is another slide. I'm not going to read this one. This is regarding Title VI civil rights and notice to the public. I'll now turn it over to Blake Leonard, Public Works Director for the town of Southbury.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Blake Leonard, Southbury Public Works Director. It's great to be here with you this afternoon to discuss our Poverty Road Bridge replacement concept. We'd like to start by thanking the community for all the feedback you've provided on this bridge replacement concept so far, and we do look forward to the continued positive communication. Since receiving our 100% commitment to fund letter in the end of '22, the town has been working very hard with our assigned consulting liaison, Close, Jensen, and Miller, to develop a concept that, 1, remains fully funded by the Federal Local Bridge Program, 2, increases the level of pedestrian, traffic, and user safety, 3, is an overall improvement to the area's functionality and its beauty, and 4, positively addresses as much public feedback as possible. We clearly understand this bridge and its surroundings are important to all of you. We've made great progress over the last year with this in mind, and we're excited to share our approach to this project with you tonight.
Thank you, Blake. I'll now introduce the rest of the project team. Our Division Chief of Bridges is Bart Sweeney. The Principal Engineer of the Consultant Engineering Unit is Derek Lassard. As I said, I'm Mark Burns, Project Manager. In attendance with me is Andrew Shields, Project Engineer, and Zach Garino from the Office of Rights-of-Way. Representing Close, Jensen, and Miller, who's our consultant liaison and acts as an extension of the department, is Jim Platosh, Project Manager, and Tom Weldon, Project Engineer. Schultz, Southbury resident, Tom Weldon. Funding for this program is through the Federal Local Bridge Program and through the Design and Managed by State, or DMS program. In the past, projects were funded with 80% federal dollars and 20% town dollars for design, rights-of-way, and construction. In 2022, under the IIJA, that changed, and now all design, rights-of-way, and construction for municipal projects is funded 100%. This will be a mix of either 100% state funds or an 100% federal funds or an 80-20 split of federal and design funds, state funds. There'll be no cost to the town for design, rights-of-way, or construction. Now, even though we're taking over the design on behalf of the town, it is still a full partnership, which is why we're here today to solicit comment, and we're soliciting input from the town at every step of the way. The goals of the DMS were to provide a streamlined approach to design using our full DOT resources to aid towns and to keep the bridges in a state of good repair by effective use of funds, to decrease our typical design time from 60 months plus to a 36-month design time, and to utilize accelerated bridge construction techniques to shorten construction duration, and also to increase the number of municipal projects delivered to construction each year. This slide is a typical cross-section or elevation view of a bridge, just to highlight some key structural elements. On top, you'll see the bridge parapet and the deck, which is what is otherwise known as the riding or traveling surface. Supporting the deck and parapet is a superstructure. In the case of this diagram and of the bridge, it's steel beams. Supporting the deck and the superstructure is the substructure, which in some cases will have a midspan pier and an abutment. And then for earth retention, you'll see wing walls. Also supporting the substructure will either be a gravity abutment or piles supported beneath the abutments. Bridge conditions are rated on, excuse me, bridge conditions are rated from a scale of 1 to 9, with 9 being in great shape and 1 being imminent failure. But don't let that concern you, because on a frequent basis, these structures are inspected by the Office of Bridge Safety, and if there's any immediate concern, they would alert the town. This is another diagram of the same elements, just so you can see the existing steel piles. I'll now turn it over to Tom Weldon, who will give the formal presentation.
Good evening. Once again, welcome to the public information meeting for state project number 130-192, the replacement of bridge number 05029, Poverty Road over the Pomperaug River in the town of Southbury. The project is located approximately 0.6 miles west of the Main Street South intersection and is functionally classified as an urban local road. Here are some aerial views of the project site. There are a few different properties in the area, which include Heritage Village, which is an active adult community for residents 55 years of age and older, to the northwest, along with Silo Point Country Club. There is a residential home to the southwest, along with the East Meadow condominiums. George Ewald Park is to the northeast, and there is a town-owned detention basin located to the southeast. The existing structure was built in 1967 and rebuilt in 1989. The current structure consists of a painted steel beam, supported concrete bridge deck superstructure that has been membrane waterproofed and paved. That is supported by stone masonry abutments with U-type wing walls, in addition to the existing stone masonry abutments being retrofitted with a concrete cap to accept the new steel beams. The existing structure has a 108-foot total structure length with 71.5 feet of clear span and a 12-foot curb-to-curb roadway width. The approach roadway widths on each side of the existing structure are approximately 24 feet curb-to-curb. There is a 3-foot sidewalk on the north side, as well as aluminum traffic rail and pedestrian rail on the bridge. To facilitate the movement of traffic across the bridge, the alternating one-way traffic is stop sign controlled at each end of the bridge, with additional posted signage indicating the movement of 4 cars maximum at a time. The posted speed limit is 25 miles per hour, and the average daily traffic on this bridge is 4,462 vehicles per day. In regards to utilities, there are existing overhead electric, communication, and cable TV wires that span the structure on the south side, as well as an 8-inch ductile iron water main buried under the river on that same side. There's also a fire hydrant adjacent to the guide rail at the southwest quadrant, and an electrical service cabinet and meter behind the approach roadway railing to the southeast that services the bridge lighting. Meetings are currently being scheduled with the utilities for the planned relocation of their facilities, both temporarily and permanently. The deck is in good condition with a rating of 7, as is the approach. There are a number of cracks apparent on both the deck and the approaches. The concrete rail end posts have collision scrapes, spalls, and gouges, and there is damage to the traffic and pedestrian rails. The superstructure is in satisfactory condition with a rating of 6. The steel girders and other structural elements have areas of blistering and peeling paint with light to moderate rust and section loss. There is minor displacement of the elastomeric material at each abutment. The substructure is in good condition with a rating of 7. The east abutment has mortar voids in the stone masonry at the joint that exists with the concrete cap, as well as cracks in the mortar joints. Excuse me. The wing walls have areas of reinforcing steel protruding from the concrete cap and voids in the masonry joints. In addition, there is also heavy vegetation growth on the wing walls. The channel has a rating of 7, and scour is noted as an 8, signifying insignificant scour susceptibility. The purpose of this project is to address the structural deficiencies and substandard safety conditions here. The need or the main reason for the bridge replacement is that the bridge is functionally obsolete due to a deck rating geometry rating of 2. The narrow width of the structure has restricted traffic flow crossing the bridge to a stop sign controlled, alternating one-way operation with 4 cars maximum at a time. The narrow width also restricts the passage of emergency vehicles, thereby increasing response times. The traffic safety features, like the bridge railings, approach guide rails, and rail transitions, do not meet current FHWA design standards and will be upgraded accordingly. The following design considerations were a priority in the development of the preliminary plans we are about to present. They are safety, aesthetics, and right-of-way impacts, being the driving force behind this project, and each component will be discussed as we move through the presentation. I currently am a resident of Heritage Village and have been for the last 18 years. I have local knowledge of the issues that the single-lane bridge causes, and I know full well how important the 3 issues listed above concern everyone here. And I will try to explain to the best of my ability how each is being addressed as we move through the presentation. This is the proposed roadway plan. In order to minimize the impacts to George Ewald Park, the town-owned retention system, and the private residents on the southwest corner, this design has considered the use of extensive retaining walls topped with an open rail bridge system. This will eliminate the need to create extensive slopes with tows that would extend deep into the park and into the residential property, thereby minimizing the impacts to each. The use of the proposed retaining walls will allow us to minimize any additional material being placed into the floodplain, which would prevent additional permitting issues to arise. Due to the realignment and widening of East Hill Road and Poverty Road, the existing drainage will need to be modified slightly to fit and will be addressed as design moves forward. Due to the width of the sidewalk on the proposed bridge, the sidewalks being constructed off the bridge will need to be widened to their terminus at the entrance to the park and to blend into the existing sidewalk on Poverty Road at the west end of the bridge going up the hill. And keep in mind, these at this point are purely conceptual plans. This is an overhead view of the proposed structure. The proposed structure will be 106 feet long, not including the approach slabs. The single-span structural steel with composite reinforced concrete bridge deck will be supported on traditional reinforced concrete abutments and U-type wing walls founded on bedrock. This will provide a 95-foot clear span, which will improve the hydraulic capacity. The horizontal alignment of the proposed structure has been centered within the right-of-way to minimize the impacts to both private and town property and to soften the curves in the approach roadways at each end of the bridge. On the slide now, you're seeing the comparison between the existing bridge and the proposed bridge. The existing bridge is currently 19.5 feet wide outside to outside with a 12-foot curb-to-curb roadway width, with traffic bridge rail installed on each side. The north side of the existing bridge has a 3-foot wide sidewalk placed between the traffic bridge rail and the pedestrian bridge rail. The proposed bridge is being widened to an outside-to-outside width of 36.5 feet, with a 28-foot curb-to-curb width that provides for 2 12-foot travel lanes in each direction and 2 2-foot shoulders, while providing a 5-foot wide sidewalk on the north side of the bridge. The new concrete deck will be protected by a membrane waterproofing and bituminous concrete overlay. This design meets current FHWA design standards for the posted speed limit of 25 miles an hour. Here's a proposed bridge elevation. Typically on most bridges, the open bridge rail would stop at the end of the bridge, which would be the abutments. In this case, to eliminate a giant wall of concrete being faced to the residents in the southwest corner and to Ewald Park, we're extending the bridge rail at all four corners beyond the bridge to the end of the retaining walls, thereby attempting to open up the view at the bridge and hopefully make it disappear into the environment. Also shown is the proposed channel grading that will be required for permitting. The bottom chord of the proposed bridge remain the same as the existing bridge, so that the roadway profile would not have to be significantly raised. All exposed concrete surfaces, apart from the bridge rail curb, will receive a stained form liner treatment to simulate stone walls that exist in the vicinity. The steel beams and open bridge rail system will be metallized, which allows the town to choose a color coat of their choice to help the bridge blend visually into the surrounding environment. Proposed lighting on the bridge is currently being incorporated into the design with the assistance from the town of Southbury. What's on the screen now is a representation of what a form-lined stained concrete wing wall, retaining wall would look like, along with a colored metallized open bridge rail system. The proposed detour is approximately 1.5 miles long. It's a 4-minute detour, which will be amply signed and simple to use. It will allow the contractor to finish the bridge work more efficiently and economically than keeping the road open during construction and building the bridge in stages. It is also safer to the traveling public to detour them away from the work zone. The detour includes the use of Poverty Road, Oldfield Road, Heritage Road, Hill House Road, and East Hill Road. Access to George Ewald Park will be maintained at all times. Currently under consideration is the closure of the lower portion of Poverty Road at the intersection with East Hill Road. And this recommendation and concept is from a pure safety perspective. The existing intersection is drastically substandard, and by closing the lower portion of Poverty Road at the intersection, it eliminates the following concerns. First, it improves intersection safety. The ability for vehicular traffic to currently make the turn onto Poverty Road and go up the hill after crossing the bridge is extremely difficult for anything other than a passenger vehicle. And if there is a vehicle stopped at the stop sign waiting to turn west onto East Hill Road or turn east onto Poverty Road to continue across the bridge, the maneuver is almost impossible. It is for this reason that emergency services responding to calls on Poverty Road enter from Heritage Road. It would eliminate the restrictive sight line to the west along East Hill Road that currently exists. It would eliminate the extremely steep grades along Poverty Road in the lower section as it approaches the intersection. The existing sidewalk would remain in place and be tied into the new sidewalk being constructed from George Ewald Park, continuing across the bridge. The existing golf cart crossing that exists just below the crest of the hill will remain in place, providing patrons using Silo Point Golf Course with safe passage across Poverty Road. The next view gives an overhead view of the limits of Poverty Road that are scheduled to be closed. As you can see, the plan is to close it at the intersection. The existing pavement will be removed up to where the existing golf cart crossing will remain in place. And then from the golf cart crossing heading up the hill, the closure will commence or will end at a point approximately 25 feet short of the driveway entrance into Heritage Village, Condo 14, on the left-hand side. In all areas where the pavement is being removed, the current plan is to topsoil the area, provide plantings, and provide wildflower mix for ease of maintenance and to allow the area to return to its original forested condition. At this time, this plan is merely conceptual and will continue through design with the coordination of the town of Southbury, Heritage Village, and Silo Point Country Club. The permit environmental concerns that are being addressed. Our anticipated permits are the town of Southbury local inland wetland, the U.S. Army Corps self-verification, and the Connecticut DOT Connecticut Deep Flood Management Certification Program Memorandum of Understanding. The project in this is in a known Connecticut Deep NDDB zone, and coordination has already begun with that office to determine the best management practices that will need to be followed during the construction of the project. According to records, there are populations of the state special concern common crayfish believed to be present within the project limits. Connecticut Deep Fisheries recommendations state that it is critical for the replacement structure to maintain conditions for unrestricted fish passage through the structure, which this proposal meets. And as a best management practice, any unconfined in-stream work in the Pomperaug River should be restricted from July 1st through September 30th inclusive. The rough construction sequence is to start off by temporarily relocating the existing overhead utilities to the north side of the bridge, temporarily relocate the existing water main further to the south, initiate the bridge and Poverty Road road closure and detour, demolish the existing superstructure, install the required temporary earth retaining systems that will be needed to hold back the existing soil to facilitate the excavation of the foundations, abutments, wing walls, and retaining walls. Install water handling devices which will be placed in front of the existing abutments, allowing the removal of the existing substructure and all new construction to be completed in the dry. Finally, we'll remove the existing abutments, excavate back to the new abutments, construct the proposed abutments, wing walls, and retaining walls, complete any required channel grading and placement of riprap slopes, construct the superstructure, place the deck and approach slabs in addition to the bridge rail systems, complete the full-depth roadway reconstruction, construction of the new sidewalks, revised drainage, and final paving. All utilities will then be relocated back to their permanent location, and the bridge will be open to traffic. The anticipated schedule and cost, we anticipate right now construction starting in the spring of 2026, with completion being in the fall of 2026. The current estimated construction cost is $6.6 million, which is being funded with 80% federal funds, 20% state funds, with zero funding required by the town of Southbury. At this point, I'd like to introduce Zach Garino of Connecticut Department of Transportation Rights-of-Way Unit to explain the rights-of-way process.
Thanks, Tom. Oh, I don't have to get that close. My name is Zachary Garino. I'm a project coordinator at the Department's Division of Rights-of-Way. Our office is responsible for acquiring the property rights that are needed for transportation projects. As Tom had mentioned, as part of this project, we're attempting to reduce any right-of-way impacts, but if there is a potential, I'd like to give you guys a brief overview of our acquisition process in case that's necessary. Again, the specific impacts are still being finalized, and they may change as the design progresses. And when we do acquire property rights, we do them in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes, Sections 13A73, 13A 98E, as well as the Uniform Act. Change the slide. The right-of-way acquisition process begins once the design has progressed to a development milestone and all of the impacts have been determined. At this point, each affected property owner will receive a formal letter of intent to acquire from our office, along with a property map which depicts the exact property rights to be acquired. On the screen here is an example of a property map that an owner may receive. It's going to show the existing conditions, the proposed, as well as the property rights that are to be acquired. Next, our office will determine the fair market value of those private rights which were depicted on the map, and use that to establish an offer of just compensation. That offer will be sent out to the property owner in writing, and a right-of-way agent will be available to meet with the property owner and explain the project, go over the specific impacts to their property, and explain how the state arrived at its offer. The property owner will be given a reasonable amount of time, typically 30 days, to consider the state's offer and enter into negotiations. When an agreement is reached, the department will prepare all the necessary paperwork to record the deed and property map on the town land records. However, if an agreement cannot be reached, in order to keep on schedule, the department may acquire the necessary property rights through its power of eminent domain. In that event, the state files a notice of condemnation in the Superior Court, along with the monetary deposit in the amount of the state's offer. The owner would have 6 months from that date to file an appeal if they felt that the state's offer was inadequate. Whether or not the owner chooses to appeal, the money deposited in the court is available to be withdrawn by the owner. And it's important to note that the state only acquires property that is actually needed for this specific project. If there are any questions regarding the right-of-way acquisition process, I can answer them after the presentation, and with that, we'll actually move over to Q&A. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Shields. I'm a project engineer for Southbury 130-192. So prior to our question and answer process tonight, I'd like everyone to take a look at the 8.5 by 11 sheet that you got on the way in. At the bottom of page 2, there is a section that is mimicking the information that's up on screen here. It has a way to contact us if you come up with something, either questions, concerns, comments that you would like us to consider and try and put into the design process if you don't think of it tonight. So there's a 2-week comment period that ends May 8th. And during that time, myself and my boss, Mark Burns, are going to be monitoring all the voicemail boxes and our email quite regularly to make sure your comments and questions may be addressed and concerns taken care of as much as possible. So again, by email, by phone, and then you could visit the project webpage on screen here. And you're encouraged to participate in the question and answer. So at this time, I'd like to open it up to Mark Burns and Jim Platosh to lead the question and answer. If you guys do have a question, feel free to come on up and or just raise your hand and ask away. We're happy to answer anything. Yes.
I have a couple of questions. Thad for Inland Wetlands Commission. Just a couple of quick questions. Are there any plans for a stoplight anywhere in this?
At this time, there is not.
Okay. Secondly, I know you say the project you're hoping is going to spring till fall. So you're talking about 6 months, or are you talking about 9 months?
8 months.
8 months? Because I know on Purchase Brook Road, it's taken longer and it's more difficult than they thought, and on River Road, it's really a mess. So my concern is, are we on better traction with this project than we are with those two projects?
With projects that have been going on over the last couple of years, we've been having a lot of storm events that are quite unprecedented and hard to plan for. So sometimes that's setting things back, as well as material acquisition times, staging times, what have you. So some of those unforeseen things are built into the planning process for these projects, but things do happen sometimes, and some of that is out of human control. So we have standard production rates that we do to calculate our entire construction schedules, and we design everything accordingly to that to make sure that everything is reasonable in what we're trying to do. In the design process right now, we have a 40-hour construction work week. If it's possible that we can, if we have setbacks and it's possible that we can try and just work more hours during the work week, whether it be longer days or weekends and night work, it would obviously be cleared with the town first, but that can be a way to try and uphold construction deadlines as well. So there are multiple ways that we could try and work around it to adhere to a construction schedule, but sometimes unfortunate things do happen that are out of our control.
Okay, thank you. And did you say there
take that then.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Talk from here, okay? All right, so, why don't we just, do a built one lane? Why? I live on East Meadow Road, and, we're not gonna be able to get in and get out, okay? So, I mean, it's just not right, $6 million for the two-lane bridge, where we're keeping the abutments, and we're just doing the structure, right?
No, we're replacing the entire bridge and the abutments.
And that, right.
That's what we built.
Well, there was one slide there, you said there was the same, we're gonna use the same ones. What was that relate to?
That
One
was
of
when the
that
bridge
slide.
was reconstructed back in 1986.
That was the build in '86?
It was
Okay,
rehabbed.
now you're taking everything down.
We're taking everything down.
And how much would it cost to make a one-lane bridge? And just keep things the way it is, without all the landscaping and everything else?
There would be no federal money or state money available for that.
Why would there be no federal money?
In
It
order to
is
meet the
what it
federal
is.
requirements, you have to have a two-lane bridge, because the bridge is currently functionally obsolete. So in order for the federal government to participate, it has to be a two-lane bridge.
What a shame, really, what a shame. You come into these towns and you just make your money and rip everything apart.
You can, if the town is really truly opposed, they can vote to cancel the project. But I would caution on that, because in the event that the bridge meets a poor condition, it will have to be two lanes.
Hi, I live in Heritage Village. I'm at that major intersection, and I just have questions about 25 feet of, in front of condo 14's driveway entrance for the rear parking lot, which is a major parking lot for us. I believe it's 6 or 7 parking spots. It's where I park my pickup truck. I have no other place to park my pickup truck. If you decide to definitely end Poverty Road prior to that driveway cut, as I thought it would be after?
It would be after, you will have access to your driveway.
Perfect, thank you, I can drive my pickup.
Yes.
And I understand we have a schedule to keep, and so it would, I'm assuming, be under normal business hours, 8 AM to 5 PM. So if I want to sleep on Saturday morning, I might be able to.
Well, the general construction time, the general construction time will be determined with coordination with the town, but typically, it's from 7 AM to 4 PM.
Okay.
And to work weekends, nights, or anything beyond that, the contractor is required to get approval from the town.
Okay, and have we chosen a contractor yet?
We haven't even chosen a designer yet.
Okay, and so we have nothing in place in regards to staging areas or how that will?
This is very preliminary,
Okay.
preliminary design.
Very
and
good.
we've got 2 years to work all the
Perfect,
issues out.
that's great, thank you.
If there are specific further concerns, we're happy to work with you however we can.
Mark Robinson. I live at 11 East Meadow Road, which is just south of the bridge. The bridge is going to be probably almost twice as wide as it is now. So we are obviously going to lose some property, not necessarily that it's ours, but it will be within the right-of-way. What's going to happen with utilities? You said utilities, you're going to move the utilities to the north temporarily. Are they going to be underground utilities or?
I have a meeting with them tomorrow morning.
Okay,
It's the first time in 3 months that I've been able to get all of the utilities to agree to meet on the same day.
okay.
My plan currently is to move all the utilities to the north side of the bridge as far as the overhead and leave them there permanently. Whether they want to attach to the bridge, that's something that will be discussed.
Yeah.
As far as the water main, temporarily, it will have to be moved further to the south. So there will probably be a temporary construction easement that will be asked of you from rights-of-way. And then the final relocation of the water main, if I can convince them, is it will be contained within the inside the first bay of the bridge.
Okay. Has anybody talked to Eversource with regards to gas?
They have no plans on coming across.
No plans on coming across?
No, I've sent 2 emails to them initially when I had first contact,
Yep.
because you had raised the question originally about a year ago.
Yeah.
And I reached out to Eversource at that point, and they told me that they had no plans of coming across. And when I set up this last meeting that we're having tomorrow, I reached out once again to Eversource Gas to see if they wanted to attend the meeting, and they said, no, we have no interest in expanding across the bridge.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Mark,
Alright.
you had made a comment initially about the right-of-way line and possible encroachment of the bridge. I just want to reassure you that the intent was to put the new bridge within the existing right-of-way and not encroach onto your property. And I could show you that when this is over. Let's go over to that board and I'll point out the
Let me put
right-of-way
up the-
line.
I mean, is there any way they can push the bridge north to so right to the edge of the right-of-way, which would encroach less on our property?
Yeah, so we are using retaining walls. We call them U-shaped walls. They basically run parallel to the road. And we're doing that as opposed to a more traditional embankment, just to keep it off your property. And I'll show that to you when this is over,
Okay.
in a little more detail.
All right, very good,
Alright.
thank you.
Has anybody talked about the speed of traffic past the school? I'm Mr. Kohler. I live right at the corner of Ewald. And according to this plan, I think it doesn't look like the road is going to be widened at my house. But 25 miles
Now
an hour
you're-
zone, you know people are doing
40.
40. But
Exactly.
now they're going to be doing 50. If they're coming flying down East Hill, across the bridge, Ewald is right there, and having watched many a game at Ewald, foul balls go over the street
Yep,
routinely,
yep,
and people are going to be flying 50 miles an hour.
yep.
So,
Well-
yeah.
Will there be stop signs at the
Well,
crosswalk?
we're investigating that currently.
Yeah.
There are a number of traffic control devices that we can use at that crosswalk, because we do realize that there's a number of parents that use the de facto parking lot and cross the road to get to Ewald Park to watch the games. And especially, was it the 3 weekends a year where they have the major tournaments? It becomes a large issue for parking. And there, as the design progresses, we will be looking at each one of the traffic control devices that could be installed, whether they be, pedestrian push buttons with flashing lights like they use on multi-use bike trails on highly traveled roads like Route 20 and Route 44.
Yeah.
That's, or there's any number of different scenarios that we can use to try to give advance warning to traffic to stop or whatever.
Speeders, anyone intending to speed on the new bridge is going to be faced with similar controls that are out there today. There's the horizontal curve near the entrance to Ewell Park. That curve is going to stay essentially the same radius. And then when you go to the other side of the bridge on the west, there, as you go onto East Hill, there's a curve in the roadway both horizontally and vertically. That curve is going to be there. So that's going to control, and vertically, the profile is going to be very close to what it is now. We're lifting the bridge slightly. I think our last number was just a little over 7 inches. So in a sense, the profile that's there today will be similar when we're done. So that's not a flat, straight road. when we get done.
Yeah. Okay.
Hopefully it helps.
We'll see.
Hi, I'm Donna Albertario at 10 East Meadow Road. Are there any considerations for building this somewhere else and dropping it off at the site? Because you have people who work from home all day, and I can imagine for 7 months, I mean, I live right there. This is probably one of the most unique situations in Southbury to have homes right at the bridge instead of, I mean, I can hear them rebuilding over the river on the highway from my home. And how now I'm going to be sitting right there. I can't imagine hearing that noise for 7 months. Is there going to be some consideration for doing most of the construction somewhere else and then bringing it in and gluing it together or something?
Those are for more of a, over a highway to put that in. This being with a water course, we have some limitations and site access and whatnot, but we will utilize accelerated bridge or ABC techniques, which includes precast elements, steel beams, things to keep disruptions to a minimum. So they'll do different items to just reduce that construction, like heavy construction periods.
Because there are several people in the area that work from home right there, so
Yeah.
it's going to be
Your
significant.
high noise periods will be when they're heavy, or is this gonna be pile supported? Or? Yeah. It'll be substructure. If there's some type of pile supporting, if they're driving piles, if it's micro piles, a little less noisy. If they're using steel H piles, you have a pile hammer, that's definitely noisy, but does the town have any decibel ordinances?
The town
or-
has a town noise ordinance.
Yeah,
We'd have to check on that, but we'll get
Yeah.
that back to you.
I'm sure there are noise ordinances, yeah.
And the concern about the speed, further up the road, you have another golf course crossing. And if people are really speeding over that area, I mean, that's a significant danger for people up there as well. It needs
That's
to be
being looked
taken.
into, but it's off of our project limits, and it's being addressed through other channels.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Svets. I'm with the Council of Governments. I just have a couple questions or comments. You mentioned you were showing 12-foot lanes and 2-foot shoulders, but the projects that I've involved with on local roads, generally we've been looking at narrower travel lanes and a little bit wider shoulders for traffic calming effects, give a little more priority to maybe bicyclists, and then, you know, try to visually narrow the travel lanes, and that helps to slow down the traffic, so I'm wondering if you would consider that. And also wondered what other types of railing or parapet walls have been considered?
As far as parapet walls, other than the open bridge rail system that we're currently looking at, which would basically have no visual impact other than the M blocks that are about 4 feet long at the terminus. We haven't looked at any other sort of parapet system that would be a solid system. And our choices are an open bridge rail system or a solid concrete parapet going across the bridge.
Or maybe a concrete parapet with a railing, a decorative railing or something on it?
Well, that's what the open three rail system is.
No, a concrete
we're
parapet with a...
running, what happens is
You're talking a
if
bridge
there's
like a handrail,
if
right?
there's a decorative
Well, I'm just trying to
handrail,
think of something that would,
like
you
a
know,
three,
this is
like a
pretty-
picket fence type of
pretty industrial
treatment.
looking, the way, you know, it's the standard rail that I know
But we'll
DOT
have,
used, but I'm just wondering, you know, there's other options as
Right.
far as
It,
optics and, you know, maybe dressing it up a little bit more than,
which we'll incorporate. We'll do either some type of simulate stone facing with staining. Painting the bridge rail system is an option too.
No, I think she's regarding the bridge rail itself. We
Exactly.
used to be able to use the picket rail, the three-rail fence with the pickets that were the Massachusetts standard. But it doesn't meet
Doesn't meet
Mass
MASH.
craft standards, which are the new federal guidelines we
Right,
have
so I
to
know
meet.
the other option is a concrete parapet with maybe a decorative rail on the top.
Like a handrail. I mean, that's something we can look into. It also is dependent on hydraulics because they're gonna look at the freeboard requirements and depending on overtopping events, if they can use a solid parapet or an open rail for water flow. But I don't know, I don't believe that's an issue.
I'm
mean,
just
there's
thinking for a residential type of situation, it might be nice to look at some alternatives.
Yeah, we can, as we progress in the final
maybe
design, we
present
can,
them to the,
Well,
to the
I think,
community.
we certainly will look at others, but the people that are gonna be impacted directly by this bridge and the aesthetics of the bridge are sitting right behind you.
Well,
and
and that's who I'm kind of thinking about,
Right.
if you come back to them with a couple options, and,
Right.
get their feedback, because
No,
they
we-
don't,
we
I don't
can-
think
oh,
they
no, we
know
can-
what the type,
Oh, no,
what the options are.
We can certainly do that, but the recommendations we need to bring back to them need to be able to be, to meet the federal safety guidelines and the federal design standards.
Well, I understand that, but there's other options besides the rail that you're showing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's all I'm asking,
Okay.
is maybe, bring some options back to the folks. Okay, thank you.
We are still early in the design at this time, so when it comes to picking up aesthetics of the bridge, we could definitely address that, and we plan to. The community does have a say in this. It's not a closed box design process. That's one of the reasons for these meetings, so that we can get some public outreach and try and get some design considerations based on the public input.
Right, again, if you could come back with a couple different options, I think that would be.
Sure, we could definitely do that.
Now you're going to see a familiar face, because they saw me this afternoon in Heritage Village. I'm Judy Katzmark, 646B Heritage Village. I went home and I spoke to a couple of people. I have a school teacher's voice. And one of the questions that was raised is when you close Poverty Road, who's going to be responsible for that piece of property? Is it going to be deeded to the town, and is the town going to maintain it? Right now, Heritage Village has a small entrance area that has a sign, and it's being maintained by Heritage Village. What kind of options are you looking at for that up to quarter acre or more that is being there, or are you just going to let it go wild? Thank you.
thank you. As of right now, there is no intent to rip up the road or anything of that nature because there is still the question of whether or not for emergency vehicle access. So for the actual street itself, that will still maintain to the town.
Oh, that was my question. You can come up with me.
That's a great question.
It would probably cost the town about $3 million.
And that's based on what judgment? I mean, is that your personal judgment?
Before I started working for Close Jensen and Miller as a liaison, I spent 40 years as a contractor and an engineer for the department.
And
So,
what specific things would take place to rehab that bridge?
to rehab that bridge, the bridge deck would need to be removed, the structural steel would need to be sandblasted, painted, the full enclosure and the permitting would be about $1 million all by itself.
Lead paint.
Hmm?
Lead paint.
Yeah.
And then if you also have to make sure the abutments meet,
What is it, lead paint?
yeah, that's,
19,
It was done in 1989,
with existing beams.
with reclaimed beams.
and those weren't sandblasted?
No,
And you were there, and you know that?
I've got the original plans from the job.
I'm suspect.
Okay, myself and Andrew see about, I don't know what, 70 applications a year for bridges, for funding.
Yes.
So I'd say the $3 million number is pretty accurate. And again, because it would be a one-lane bridge, there would be no state or federal participation, so it would be 100% the responsibility of the town. On what? That's up to your elected officials, but again, I caution, if you vote it down and then decide to rehab this bridge, it will be completely on the town.
Do we know what the life expectancy of the current bridge is at the moment?
Probably near the end. If the beams were put in 1989, rehabs are usually for about a 25-year design life. And if the abutments were built in 1967, bridges then were built for about a 50-year design life. So you're already past your design life expectancy.
Weren't the abutments redone in 1989 as well?
No. No, the only thing,
There's a good photo of them.
the only thing that was done was they chopped down approximately 1.5 to 2 feet of the existing stone masonry abutments and poured a concrete cap on top of them to accept the new beams. Used beams, yeah.
Yeah, if you look at the handout on the first page, you can see where the concrete cap was placed. And then the rest is all a masonry with concrete in the middle. You also don't meet scour. So as we've seen in the past couple of years with the increase in storm events, scour has become a greater concern. Right now, we're doing 5 bridges in the program because they all scoured out.
When in the past 40 years, there hasn't been one. We've had 5 in the last calendar year. So the rain events have been getting more extreme. And when it comes down to, do we actually need to do this project? The problem is, when a bridge is 35 years old and we already used recycled items, the substructure, we're still reusing it from its original time. And it's already hitting its design life point. So if we take our superstructure, all the steel, and that's at 35 years when it was designed for 25, we're pretty much in need of designing something from scratch. And that's just to adhere to the federal guidelines. We're following somebody else's rules here. So when we're doing that, we need to make sure that in order to make sure that the town doesn't have to spend the money to get this done, we have to follow the rules of the federal government. So in the local bridge programs, we do our best to try and make sure and tiptoe the line of the black and white texts, because trying to find some of the loopholes and roundabouts to not build you that massive interstate structure in the middle of a nice residential neighborhood, because that's what all the regulations are. And that's what we're being tested against, and we have to testify against to our environmental and legal regulators all the time. So in the federal local bridge program, we're the ones tiptoeing the line to see really how far we can get to try and make these structures work for the feds, to make sure we can get the money so the towns don't have to pay and your taxes don't rise, but also make sure it's an aesthetic structure that can serve the public purpose. So we're caught in between a rock and a hard place at times, but the reason why we're here is because we accepted an application from the municipality originally to try and replace this structure as a call for help, because the funds weren't there for the town.
And please also remember, we just wrapped up, as far as the town's concerned, rehabilitation work on Heritage Bridge, as many of you know. And what we hear is that's added about 15 to 20 years of service life to it by completing that rehab. But what's very important is we have a rotation between rehab work on the two main bridges into this area. So what I'm getting at is, if we were looking at possibly replacing Heritage Road Bridge, 15 years out from now, we would not want to be in that same situation on Poverty Road Bridge also. So we'd like to rotate, by 10, 20 years, these new bridge replacements so that we always have access.
The current bridge, there's a wall that protects the pedestrians that are crossing the bridge with cars. I noticed on the new design, there's no wall between the pedestrians and the cars. And, it's Heritage Village. There's a lot of people that, can't see that well, and you can see by the guardrails that, there's been a lot of damage. Might behoove you to add that extra guardrail to protect the pedestrians on the bridge.
We can look into that.
We can definitely try and incorporate that into the design. Thank you.
John Deal, 928B Heritage Village. So first, a quick question about the travel lane width that we're talking about. Do you know what the existing approach width is?
It's approximately 24 feet.
So the lanes are 10 with some bike lane, or?
No, what the existing approachway,
Yeah,
at each end of the bridge, the roadway is approximately 24 feet wide.
and that's both.
That's what exists.
Full travel lanes, or is there bike lane in that?
I don't believe there's any striping out there currently.
There's no striping out there, so
So there's,
the town has a 24-foot wide roadway out there.
So it's
How
like,
it's used
so
is,
12 feet and 12 feet, yeah.
yes.
Okay, cool. So my comment was just gonna be on that case. You know, when you look at the yellow and the orange, it's like if you're coming from a narrow space and then you get to this wide space, all of a sudden it becomes like, let's accelerate and move faster. A humble request would be to marry into the existing approaches so that the roadway doesn't look like it opens up for you and step on the accelerator, but the 12 feet drives through and nice wide bicycle lane would be appreciated. So that's that comment. And this is more for Blake. So when the road is dead-ended past the driveway, is it gonna be a cul-de-sac or just a square cut, or what would that look like? And I mainly ask for your trucks and your workers and your people, and then, of course, the residents that live right there. What is, during a snow event or maintenance event, what's that turnaround sound and appearance gonna look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. And that is still a design in progress. It's certainly conceptual right now, so the distance from that driveway is still TBD. What can happen on that road for widening and turnaround radius, et cetera, is still, to be considered. The best answer for you is a work in progress that will really get ironed out in that design phase.
So whether it even actually be torn up, because I heard comment before about tear up, grading, and seating, but then I heard somebody say possible driving through for emergency vehicles.
that was a comment that came up during the previous meeting with Heritage Village, being able to have emergency vehicle access. So whether it be a fully tear up or something where we put like a temporary, like some kind of a gate system or whatnot, that's still being looked at.
Or even
The
something's
closing of Poverty Road right now is purely
I'm
conceptual.
sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. The closing of Poverty Road at this stage is currently, it's just conceptual.
Gotcha.
We've tossed some ideas around between the town, between Heritage Village, Silo Point Country Club, and a final decision as to what's going to happen on Poverty Road is yet to be determined.
Cool. And I'm fully support Blake, and a decision is made with Heritage Village agreeing, all thumbs up. But by all means, the turnaround and that movement of trucks in that area on a snow event, I could just imagine the noise.
That's a good point.
Are there any other questions or comments at this time? Seeing and hearing nothing. The board here is still going to be available. We'll be hanging out for a little while. If you want to go discuss something by the boards or in private, we're happy to speak to anyone.
Yep. And the comment period's open until March 8th?
May 8th.
May 8th, thank you. Yep, so, yes. Is there going to be another public info meeting? We're not planning on one at this time.
But if there are comments and questions, the email that's on the bottom of that sheet is directly monitored by both me and Mark, and the rest of the support team here is always involved.
And you
So,
can email me or Andrew directly too, and we'll be able to
yes.
either direct the question to the proper people, or we'll be able to answer your question.
There was recently some construction work done on Poverty Road up by the Gamefield School. And then they patched it, and then they patched it again. I'm just hoping it's not the same road crew that did that work that's gonna be working on this bridge. Because it's in terrible condition.
Fair enough. That was a utility company's patchwork that I'll leave nameless at this point.
We'll make sure the road looks good when it's done.
Maybe you can patch that other section too. I'm sure everybody here would like to see that section patched.
How far up are we talking?
Up to the stop sign by Danfield, yeah.
Probably about 200 feet of trench.
We'll look at it.
Just a follow-up question on the dead end in time. When would that design decision be made, and how would that be released to the public, or?
Probably as we progress further on, so we need to scope with our designer for final design, and we'll have 60% design plans due, I'd probably say, probably October, November. We can always we'll send a copy to Blake, and he can disseminate, and we can coordinate with Heritage Village and whatnot too.
I sincerely appreciate everyone stopping by tonight.
Oh, go ahead.
Please.
What about Pomperaug Village?
What's your question?
Are we gonna take that into consideration, how we can get out?
Sure, the design team will be glad to look into all that. I gotta get you the location.
And just to reassure everyone, if anyone emails anyone on this board here, expect a response back within a day. It's not going into a black box that's unmonitored. This is our job, to serve you guys and do what we can for you.
Were there particular emails, or just this one email in the back?
That one is a common department email for our crew, which is comprised of 4 people. If you want our directs emails, I believe they're on the back of that sheet as well.
I don't think they are, but
But an easy way is for mine, for example, Andrew Shields, it's andrew.shields@ct.gov. And everyone else who's directly employed by the state of Connecticut is the same way. So it's first dot last name @ct.gov.
But that email in the back is to the group of you guys.
to me, Andrew, and the other 2 people in my group, and I monitor that on a daily basis. No, it's going to me and him. But if it's easier, you can email me directly too.
So at this point, this concludes tonight's meeting. Again, we appreciate your time.